November 11th, 2004. I came fishing at this spot right behind me with my then father-in-law, and a series of very fortunate events led me to reel in a blue catfish weighing 98 pounds that would break the Oklahoma state record by more than 10 pounds at the time, and fast forward 20 years later, is still the Oklahoma state record blue catfish on rod and reel. The next few days would just be kind of a blur with all of the news, articles written about me, and eventually, because a good friend I know knew someone that knew someone, I ended up on the front page of ESPN Outdoors. And the whole thing was just kind of surreal. It honestly still is surreal. We donated the fish to the aquarium in Jinx, Oklahoma, where it lived out the rest of its life and was on display, and thousands of people got to see the fish, and I'm really grateful that we were able to let some people have that experience of seeing a once-in-a-lifetime fish. I'm grateful for having that experience of catching a once-in-a-lifetime fish. So our story starts right about here. We got here a couple hours after dark, and the gentleman that was my father-in-law at the time, he's since passed away. He brought me fishing out here. It was the second time I'd came with him. We actually came a couple of nights before that and didn't catch anything. The night I caught my record, we were right here in this general area, and they cast out a set of rods. I don't know, 4 or 5 rods, and one of the other gentlemen that was with us, Richard, he cast out the rod that I caught the fish on. And then this is where our story kind of takes an interesting turn. Let me set up the next part of the story a little bit for you, because it's a doozy. So for a few days before the trip out here, I'd gone back and forth with my father-in-law at the time. His name was Alton. Incredible fisherman. He knew this piece of water like the back of his hand. They caught giant catfish out here. I'd never been exposed to that kind of fishing. And so he brought me out here, and to really understand this part of the story, you have to go back way more than 20 years. 29-year-old BJ was a much different person than 49-year-old BJ. 29-year-old BJ was the definition of fake it until you make it. And Alton had these rod holders that they're really heavy duty rod holders. You can reel in a fish, they pivot, they've got a piece of PVC pipe that the rod sits in, and the rods will pivot, and you can actually just reel in a fish, and you can kind of play the fish without ever taking it out. And I'd smarted off and said, what's the fun of that? If you're gonna bring me out here and build up this, chance I have to catch a big catfish, I want to feel it. I want to take it out of the rod and I want to feel it. And so we did the back and forth, well, you think you're big enough and I can handle anything. And truth be known, 29-year-old BJ did not have enough confidence to think that he could handle anything. Like I said, I was the definition of fake it until you make it. And a lot of it was from my childhood. You got to go way back farther than 20 years. And probably you have to really dig deep down into some therapy to get where I was at mentally. I'd only been in Oklahoma about 4 years at that point, and I'd spent really up until that point in my life not really doing anything with my life. And I had a family member, God rest his soul, who saw something in me and convinced me to move to Oklahoma and go back to school, and I did. And because of that one person, I moved to Oklahoma, and went to school, and ended up working at a bank, and I met my wife at that time, and that kind of led me to here on the bank fishing for catfish. And like I said, it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to this kind of fishing, and I didn't know what to expect, but I knew deep down inside that I was full of doubt, and really didn't think I could back up what I had been spouting leading up to this trip. And I really didn't have to, I really didn't expect to have to back up my mouth at that point. Like I said, 29-year-old BJ was a much different person than 49-year-old BJ. So, like I said, there's a lot to, my story and growing up, and the reason I was 29 years old and full of, self-doubt. We can't get into all that in a, YouTube video, but there was a lot there, and, but that's where I was. And so, for this next part of the story, we're going to take a little walk, because that's what we did that night. So you'll have to remember, this is 20 years ago. But we took a walk down here, and this part of the story is a little fuzzy. I don't remember exactly what we took the walk for. It was either one of two things. We'd either walk down here to cast out another set of rods, one of the other guys that was with us, to set up another set of rods down here, or we were gathering firewood. There used to be like a 55-gallon barrel out here, and people would build fires. So we took a walk down here, and there was, like I said, 4 of us that night. Me, Alton, Richard, who I mentioned, cast out the rod, and another younger guy, Justin, that worked for Alton. And we walked all the way down here in this little corner. I think we were gathering firewood. For the sake of the story, let's just say that's what we were doing. But we were all 4 down in this area. So here's the part of the story that I've never told anybody in 20 years. I'm going to show you. So that's really kind of what we were looking at. Alton brought lights with him. Back then it was not LED lights, and so he was a mechanic, and he would tote around a car battery with him. And an old school like work light, the metal housing with a 100-watt light bulb. And so his rods were well lit, just like that. That's really what you could see from down here. You could see, and like I said, we were a little farther down the bank. I'm going to say total distance from here to where we were at was maybe 75 yards. And you could see his 12-foot eagle claw rods. They were white, or, real light colored rods. They stuck out. This is the part of the story that I've never told anyone. So, we were down here, like I said, I think gathering firewood. And at some point in the gathering firewood, I turned around and I saw one of the rods. And it was just doubled over. I mean, it was just laying out as flat as you can get. And 29-year-old BJ that was full of self-doubt turned back around and just ignored it. And the part of the story I really haven't mentioned up until this point is it had been a well-known thing in coming out here that I was going to reel in the first fish. Alton always said it was a customary thing for them to do, and I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was they always let a new guy reel in fish, or the first fish. For whatever reason, it was for me. And it was a thing that I knew. I was expecting that. I was expecting to reel in the first fish. And like I said, when we got down here, and I turned around and I looked and I saw that white rod just folded over. And it was an active folding over. It wasn't just flat out. It was bouncing. I mean, it was obvious that there was a fish on that rod. Now, I had no clue what kind of fish was on that rod. I just knew there was a fish, and I knew there was the potential for it to be a big fish. And 29-year-old full of self-doubt BJ turned back around and just acted like it wasn't there, and nobody else saw it. And It was a couple of minutes, probably. It felt like forever. I don't know. It could have been a minute. It could have been 30 seconds. It felt like forever. And I remember very vividly a couple of times, you know, talking to the guys there while whatever we were doing, gathering firewood or casting out rods or whatever. I remember being active in the conversation and one or two times glancing back over to see if it had stopped or if it was still doing it. And it was still doing it. And after what seemed like, you know, forever in my mind, one of the other guys finally noticed. And that's when I heard, BJ, run down there and get that fish. I wasn't prepared to run down there and get that fish. All of the doubt and all of the, you know, just, I don't know. I can't explain it. Unless you've ever been there, you just, you know, you can't explain that kind of feeling of knowing you're going to go down there and do something and there's the chance you're going to fail and you're going to fail miserably and you're going to fail in front of people after you've talked like such a huge game. Of course, nobody knows this is going through my mind. Nobody knows that I've, you know, seen that rod doubled over for the last minute or two. And so I made the walk down there. I got to one of these rods just like this, and with all of the, what little, I guess, rather, bit of self-confidence I could muster, I picked it up and I started reeling. And I had no idea what to expect. I immediately was just blown away by what I was feeling on the line. A lot of the story people have heard before, but you know, at one point into the reeling, this fish in, one of the other rods went off, and Alton grabbed that rod. He started fighting that fish, and at some point those two fish got crossed, the lines got crossed, and we got kind of in a mess. And at some point his fish came off and my fish stayed on. And you know, I had no idea what, like I said, I had no idea what to expect, but immediately just was in it for the fight of my life. You know, it was just, that fish was so powerful. I was just along for the ride. I had no idea what to do. You know, they were kind of coaching me along, you know, telling me what to do, but really all I was doing was just hanging on. I remember his reel was a little uncomfortable. It was a spinning reel, and the reel was a little uncomfortable, and I was kind of struggling trying to reel in the fish. I took off my hoodie to try and get a little, I don't know, I think just to get things out of the way. I don't remember how long it took to get the fish in. You know, it felt like 30 minutes. It was probably more like 10, you know, maybe 15. I remember at one point I got the fish up pretty close to the bank, you know, maybe 20, 30 yards out, and it's super shallow out here. His belly hit that mud, and he turned and ran and peeled drag, and it was all I could do just to hang on. I remember at one point telling, you know, it's kind of sloped out here, and at one point I was getting pulled down to the water, and I remember telling somebody to grab a hold of my belt, grab a hold of the back of my pants, you know, don't let me like go in the water, because I was getting pretty close to the edge of the water. And I mean, I couldn't, I'm 5'2" and stocky, like I've low center of gravity, but he was still just no problem pulling me towards the water. So, you know, we got the fish in, and one of the guys, Justin, the younger guy that worked for Alton, he went out there and grabbed the fish. We pulled it up at the bank, and that was kind of it. You know, like they say, the rest is history. I stood there on the bank just kind of in awe of this giant fish. I'd never seen anything like it. Had no frame of reference of what a trophy class, you know, blue cat was, much less a state record blue cat. And so I was just kind of in awe. We tried to weigh it on some cotton scales, you know, like 100-pound cotton scales. And at one point, we'd gotten it up, and the scales, you know, hit 100 pounds, and his tail was still kind of on the ground. And so that's when they really were like, okay, this might be a state record. We need to start calling people. Started calling the game warden, and, you know, it was I'm gonna say it was 8 o'clock, somewhere around there, give or take, when we hooked the fish. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning when I got home that night. The big takeaway for me was, you know, in the last 20 years, it was really a lot of regret over what almost didn't happen because of, you know, my lack of self-confidence. And, you know, I've spent the last 20 years simultaneously, you know, kicking myself every time I think about it. And also just being incredibly grateful that everything in the world, everything in the universe that night lined up perfectly for me to catch that fish. So many things could have gone wrong. So many things did go wrong. You know, like I said, the other fish biting at the same time and lines getting tangled up and that fish coming off. The fact that I let it sit down here, you know, for a couple of minutes. At that point, you know, it's 20 years ago, nobody was using circle hooks. They're still using J hooks, you know, with 20-pound mono line. You know, at any point that fish could have snapped that line, could have come off the hook, you know, before it even got down here. I had zero experience on how to fight or, you know, play a fish that size. Everything in the world could have gone wrong, and just everything lined up perfectly. And just, I think it's, you know, just pretty much a miracle that I was able to land that fish. And you know, the big takeaway for me is, you know, over the last 20 years is that lack of self-confidence, you know, could have cost me an experience that has turned out to be one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Not necessarily because of the fish, but everything that's happened since then. What that did for me was it lit a fire in me. First of all, that I just immediately fell in love with this kind of catfishing, and I knew that I had to learn how to do this on my own. And I spent several years chasing that. Well, first of all, chasing that feeling, but, you know, learning and trying to do this on my own. And it would be, I don't know, 5 or 6 years before I ever caught a fish over 30 pounds. You know, it could have been another, you know, 10 years after that before I caught one over 50. I went several years, you know, just terrible fishing. You know, I had no clue what I was doing. I was just learning along the way. But, you know, the thing that happened out of that was, over the years, aside from, you know, the personal growth that I've had, and, you know, figuring out that I can do anything. You know, as cliche as it sounds, like, we're the only things that limit ourselves. There's nothing that can limit me. It's just all in my mind. And that's part of the reason I wanted to start this channel, is to share that part of, you know, this story with people. And, you know, let other people out there, if there's other people that are in that frame of mind, know that you don't have to stay there. You can get out of that. You can combat, if it's years of, you know, trauma for whatever reason, or, you know, just however you ended up in a spot where you don't think you can do things. I was there, and, you know, I'm not there anymore. I have all the confidence in the world now. And 29-year-old BJ had that, you know, fake confidence that he talked a big game, but 49-year-old BJ knows that there's not anything out here I can't handle. And you know, like when I put a video out, you know, like a couple weeks ago of that gar, you know, that I caught, 29-year-old BJ would not have stuck with that. I feel like at some point, you know, 29-year-old BJ might have just been inclined to cut the line and not ever tell anybody the story, you know. 49-year-old BJ worked his rear end off to get that fish in, and I don't think there's anything out here I can handle. But besides the, you know, the growth and the, you know, learning and the overcoming, the other just more amazing part of the story for me has been the people that I've gotten to meet just from that experience. You know, that starting this, you know, passion, my wife would call it obsession, but that lighting this fire of, you know, wanting to catch these giant catfish in me, kind of set me on a path to meet some incredible people, and people that I, you know, consider some of my best friends I've met because of that experience, and to think that I wouldn't have had that experience, you know, because of the self-doubt, and I could have missed out on knowing some really incredible people. That's one of the things that really I kick myself for more than anything else. You know, the fish is kind of secondary to the bigger part of the story. So yeah, I wanted to tell the story. I think it's important to share these kind of things. I think, you know, the fishing is the main portion of the content on my channel, but also there's the story of, you know, my life and the things that I've been through. And I think too often we just kind of get caught up in, you know, glossing over things, I guess, and we don't talk about things, and especially as men. And that's one of those things that you know, I'll probably preach more on this channel. As men, we need to open up more, and it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to share your feelings. And as society, we stigmatize that, but you know, that's kind of BS. So we need to get better at that. But I think it's important to share these kind of stories. And like I said, the bigger part of the story for me is, you know, all of the people that I've gotten to meet and all of the experiences I've gotten to have, you know, since then. And it almost didn't happen. And that's kind of a bummer to think about. But you know, like I said, everything in the universe lined up for me to catch this fish, have this amazing experience, meet incredible people because of it. And yeah, I hope you get something out of that. You know, if you've watched this far, I appreciate you watching and listening to me ramble. I know this is long, and I know we all have short attention spans, me included. But I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you watching. And you know, if you've ever interacted with my content in any way, you know, click the little thumbs up, or you know, liked it or shared it or commented, I appreciate that. If you do anything, share this video. If you only share one of my videos, share this video with somebody, especially if you know somebody that, you know, might benefit from, you know, hearing this part of the story. Like I said, in 20 years, I've told one person the story, and really it's just because it's been kind of embarrassing. I'm not really proud of it. I am proud of the outcome. I'm proud of, you know, 49-year-old BJ. I got to give 29-year-old BJ some slack, because, you know, he got to where he was for reasons, and yeah, I'll give him a little bit of grace. But I'm beyond proud of 49-year-old BJ, and you know, I'm really excited to see what 59-year-old BJ is going to do, or 69-year-old BJ, because we've still got a lot of fishing to do together. I will add this to wrap up, and I've told my wife this too. In the last 20 years, one of the things that's really bothered me, I don't have any regrets. I wouldn't change anything about the whole experience. Everything happens for a reason. But the one thing that really has bothered me for 20 years is knowing in my heart of hearts that when we caught that fish and weighed it up here on the bank, that it was a triple-digit fish. And we had it out of the water for a long time. It was about 40 degrees that night, and we were trying to get a rope in it, and anyway, get it back out in the water, and it lost weight, and it certified at 98. And that's been the thing that's bothered me for 20 years. So in my heart of hearts, knowing that I caught a triple-digit fish, not good enough. I'm not gonna be happy until I break that triple-digit mark. And you know, one of the things that, like I said, one of the things that come out of this is I've gotten to meet some incredible people that have a wealth of information about catfishing, and are way better at it than I am, and know way more about it than I do. And you know, I think it's important to learn from those kind of people, and someday we'll see. You know, that's the chase now, triple-digit. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, appreciate you. Hope to see you back next week.